everyone. Saludos y bienvenidos a todos. Welcome to the 2020 Partners Summit. My name is Courtney Cintron, Ingenuity's Partner Engagement Specialist, and thank you so much for being here with us today. I hope that you're all doing well and staying safe. We appreciate all of your hard work that you're doing during these times right now, and we're hoping that we can offer something up for you today to make things just a little bit brighter. So to start, this event is BYOB. So if you haven't already, feel free to go ahead and grab your beverage of choice here. I'm certainly partaking, Nicole's partaking, so cheers to you all. So, as you may know, we switched up the original event agenda for today. The updated summit is now here on Zoom, as you know, and it is also a 2-day event. So 1 day just for arts partners and 1 day for CPS teachers. So this change was primarily due to some technological barriers that we encountered. We were really hard pressed to find an ideal software that was accessible to all and that would connect teachers and partners virtually in an easy and streamlined way. But we're really excited about this new format for a number of reasons. So one, it's providing us with an opportunity to really use data as a springboard to make connections. It's also going to give you a chance to see some new ARTLOOK functions in action and where you can boost your profile visibility. And finally, it's going to help teachers directly connect with you when we have the Teachers Summit on November 12th. And we'll get a little bit more specific about that later today. So today's event is really all about leveraging available technology and enhancing and updating your ARTLOOK profiles to establish meaningful partnerships with schools and make it easier for them to connect with you. So during the Teachers Summit on November 12th, we will be highlighting a curated list of partners with completed profiles that attended today's event, and partners with completed profiles will also be entered into a drawing, which we'll provide more details about later in today's session. I don't want to give too much away. So we have got a full and interactive agenda planned for you today. After our welcome and introduction, you'll hear from members of the Department of Arts Education on important things to note when partnering with CPS this year, and they'll also direct you to some key resources. Then Nicole is going to take you in the Wayback Time machine to talk about how we got where we are today with utilizing technology to support partnerships. Then we'll be moving on to maximizing technology tools and talking about how you can make the most of the new and pre-existing features on ARTLOOK Map right now. And we'll be working with 2 partner organizations, Snow City and Lyric Opera, to provide some ARTLOOK profile demos on a staging site. And then finally, in the Supercharging Your ARTLOOK profile visibility, we'll provide some time for you to make updates and enhancements to your profile, and we'll put some grooves on for you. And if you have any questions during that time, we'll have 2 assistance breakout rooms. So in the we'll have one that's data and research. And in that room, if you have any questions about ARTLOOK, including profile information, search capabilities, what your login info is, you'll be able to chat directly with Ingenuity's Director of Data and Research, Steve Schufelt, and data analyst, Rebecca Perdomo. And then if you have any questions about partnering with CPS right now, including questions about acceptable use policy or tier status, you'll have an opportunity to chat with members of the CPS Department of Arts Education. So, and we'll drop links in the chat for you later on in the session for those. So these assistance sessions are optional, but available if you have any questions, like I said. So just remember to come back to the main session using the original link that you received via Zoom in your email account, the same way you got here today. And then when you come back, we'll have some closing announcements and remarks and wrap things up. So I'd like to pass things off now to 2 members of the Department of Arts Education team and welcome Rachel Claff, Manager of Professional Learning, and Jess Rodrigue, Arts Education Operations Specialist, to give you a quick rundown on some important things to know about partnering with CPS during this time, and also some of those key resources I was talking about.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rachel Claff. As Courtney said, I'm the Manager of Professional Learning for the Arts Ed Department at CPS, and I'm joined by my colleague, Jess. who is our arts education operations specialist. And on behalf of the whole DAE team, I wanted to thank you all, mainly for everything that you do to increase student access to incredible and rich and meaningful arts education across the whole district, but also for being tenacious and flexible and patient in navigating what can, let's be honest, at times be a complicated and confusing system. And that's even without the challenges of remote learning. So we want to thank you for hanging in there. And related to that, it's really important to our team that you know that the Department of Arts Education is really here to help you. So anybody who's ever seen me do a presentation knows I'm a huge fan of a good GIF. So here's one that maybe kind of encapsulates how you might feel about navigating CPS policies and procedures sometimes. And our goal is to make you feel a little more like the second animation. We're really here for you to serve as translators and detectives sometimes, or human Google searches to help you out. We do not always make the policies that are given to you. Sometimes they can be just as baffling to us as they are to you. But what we can do for you is to translate them into some kind of English. So to that end, we've been working on developing our own resources to make things clearer for you. And know that we also go to bat for you behind the scenes with other CPS departments and office wherever and whenever we can to help improve their processes, or barring that, at least to get them to tell us what the processes are so that we can relay them to you and to solve your problems. So again, we want to thank you again, not just for everything that you do for our students, but for your patients. And please do reach out to us whenever you need help, and also to give us any feedback on how we can continue to make your sailing a little bit smoother. And with that said, I'm going to turn things over to Jess. She's going to outline sort of our 5 basic steps for partnering with CPS. And then later on, as Courtney mentioned, we will be in a breakout to answer any of your questions. So take it away, Jess.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad to be here with all of you today. As Rachel said, I know it can be a challenge sometimes to work through all these steps that CPS requires when you partner with us. And I hope that we can provide some insight and clarity into that process today. So we've created a bit of an Arts Partner Quick Start guide that we will go through in more detail during the breakout session that really outlines these 5 steps in partnering with CPS. One is on obtaining an active CPS vendor number, which you will need to partner with us. The second step is about background checks, whether you need them or not, and how to move forward in that process. And then establishing any necessary agreements for payment, or if you're a no-cost provider, the contracts that are needed for that as well. And then obtaining tier status from the Department of Procurement, which is a new thing this year with remote learning, and we'll go over what that looks like in the breakout session as well. And then how to get paid. So as a vendor, you know, that's an important piece of all this, and I know that that's the part I think that sometimes can become the trickiest part, and we really want to make that as easy as possible for you guys, because that's a really important piece to this. So what it looks like to open a purchase order and to start working with schools, and where to send invoices, and all the sort of nuts and bolts. And in here on this slide is a link to that Arts Partner Quick Start guide that gives you those details of moving through that process. And we've also listed here some key resources for arts partners. So again, a link to our Arts Partner Quick Start guide, the current arts partner and prospective arts partner pages on our website that detail different processes about being a current arts partner, and then sort of a step-by-step process again for prospective partners, as well as links to different forms that you may need to access. And the CPS acceptable use policy for vendors is linked here as well, which gives some more information on procurement's sort of policies and procedures about tier status and working in that remote learning environment, and what we're doing to keep our students safe in that virtual world that we're now all in. And then lastly, the arts education remote learning guidance. There is a whole section in there that's dedicated specifically to remote learning for arts partners. So, please feel free to read the whole thing. It's all 104 pages of it at this point, but there is a section specifically for partners. So I suggest strongly to review that section with a lot of great guidance and help on navigating these times. And for any other questions, always feel free to reach out to artsvendors@cps.edu. You will get me that answers those emails the majority of the time, but it's a way for us to sort of keep track of all the vendor questions that come in and really see, what help you guys specifically need and try to stay on top of those things. So welcome. We're glad you guys are all here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jess and Rachel. So hopefully those quick start guide links are helpful. Rachel just dropped them into the chat there so you can access them. We'll also follow up with a PDF version of this deck in case you missed those. But now I'd like to introduce the amazing Nicole Upton, Director of Partnerships and Professional Learning at Ingenuity, to provide some context and give us a one-in-a-decade look at how far we've come with partnerships and technology resources.
Hey, Court, thanks so much. Hi, everybody. It's so good to see you, even though I can't see you. We always love our summit days so much. So we're really, really missing not being in the same room with you and with teachers and commiserating about everything that we're going through together over a couple of drinks and some yummy food. So I hope you're taking care of yourselves and your loved ones today. And we're all with you in spirit at this point. So just an additional thing I want to add on to what Rachel and Jess just presented was that Ingenuity just a couple of weeks ago did a Procurement 101 session with folks from the CPS Department of Procurement, and kind of goes through some of those details that were just presented as well. So we're going to try to drop that link into the chat for you for the YouTube video that you can access there. Okay, so let's get to it. We're going to start by going back a little bit. And this is like, I should get brownie points as a wife because my husband's a big nerd and even has like a little TARDIS Christmas tree ornament every year. So I'm kind of proud of myself that I even know what that is. So drop in the chat for us, if you were, think back to 2010. Where were you 10 years ago? So drop that in. I'm really curious. Where were you 10 years ago? Were you working in the sector already? Were you in school at that point? What were you doing? So I have some folks reflecting back that they were just starting their work. Some folks were still in school getting their degrees. Some were still working in the sector at a different organization. Some of you were graduating from high school. Wow. I didn't do this exercise to make any of us feel old, by the way, but just to go back 10 years ago, what we were doing. So a lot of you were teachers and kind of working in generalized education and outreach. So I'm going to take us back in the arts education TARDIS and the CPS TARDIS, back to 2010. So back in 2010, here's what was going on in the district. Ron Huberman, you remember him, he stepped down as Chief Executive Officer of CPS. And at that point, Mayor Daley appointed Terry Mazzani, who was the head of the Chicago Community Trust, the CEO, to serve as the interim CEO of CPS. Also that year, Karen Lewis was elected to the Chicago Teachers Union, and Illinois adopted the Common Core state standards 10 years ago already. Can you believe that? Also, we had an Office of Arts Education, which is different from the department that we have today, and they launched the Chicago Guide for Teaching and Learning in the Arts. How many of you out there remember that guide, the Chicago Guide? How many of you have never heard of the Chicago Guide before? If anybody's never heard of it, I'm curious about that too. Great. So they released the Chicago Guide for Teaching and Learning in the Arts, and as it kind of relates most directly to Ingenuity's work, the Chicago Arts Learning Initiative, or CALI as we called it, was beginning the process of convening all the different stakeholders from all across the city of Chicago, arts and cultural representatives, and education stakeholders to talk about how to get more arts in Chicago public schools. So at this time, Ingenuity was not around. There was no ARTLOOK map, it didn't exist. And at the time, I was the director of education at the Auditorium Theater. That seems like a lifetime ago. So there have been, in this 10 years, and I think this is just wild to think about, 7 CEOs in CPS in the last 10 years, and six, count them, 6 directors of arts education. So the arts have lived in really dramatically different places within the district over the last 10 years. And back in 2010, the arts team was actually the Office of Arts Education. It was this kind of standalone office within CPS. And in 2012 is when it became a department. Now, on the surface, this seems like just yet another kind of semantic change in how CPS calls things, but it was actually a pretty significant shift. Because when it became a department, it was housed under the umbrella of the Office of Teaching and Learning. And that was important because the arts, for the first time in the district, were sitting beside math and science and language arts and all of the other core content areas. So it was kind of not only a shift, but also an indication of the district's shifting priorities around the arts. Okay, so you say, that's all really interesting, Nicole. Why does this matter? Why are we talking about this now at a summit that's meant to connect you to teachers and to arts partners? So, you know, I think it's important to remember that every time we have a change, it feels like a new initiative, a new priority, new policies and new procedures, and that system that we work so closely with often has partners holding the bag, right? Like we're the ones that are consistently year over year, we're here, right? Our organizations are here. Even if 10 years ago we weren't working in our organizations figure out how to make it work despite the revolving door. So you and those who came before you really deserve a medal for that tenacity and for that endurance, because it's not easy work. Again, 7 CEOs and 6 directors of arts education in the last 10 years. So back to when I was working in the sector 10 years ago at the Auditorium Theater, I was hired to do an outreach program for a touring production called Midnight Cry, the Underground Railroad to Freedom. It was connected to something that we were doing on the main stage. And I was responsible for taking this free touring show to 100 Chicago public schools. Scott, you remember that, right? And Midnight Cry, I came in and I was, you know, kind of young and idealistic in my career. And I thought, awesome, like we've got this free program. We're going to bring it to 100 schools. That's a piece of cake, right? No problem. But I quickly began to learn that getting past the school clerk when you were making calls was a challenge, right? You would call the school because the only number that you had for the school was the main line. You'd get the school clerk. You were trying to get to the teacher, but you never really quite knew who the teacher was because they were never listed anywhere. And you would always, most often, leave a message with the clerk, hoping that it would get to the right person, which it usually did not, by the way. And then, of course, doing your due diligence, you followed up with email of the emails that you could find. If you could find a teacher email to communicate with, let alone the arts teacher email. That was always a real challenge. So you would send all these emails, you'd spend time making calls, and then you'd also try to strategically partner with the CPS Office of Arts Education. That was what I was doing at the time. And it became really clear that, you know, office and the departments working didn't necessarily have all of the greatest systems for communicating to the arts teachers either at the time. They really couldn't tell you who were the arts teachers there either, which is always kind of stunning to me that even within CPS, it was really hard to get a grasp of who was teaching the arts. So frustrating doesn't even quite capture how that felt. The program usually the program that I ran at that time, that Midnight Cry program, unfortunately went to schools that either picked up the phone or responded to an email. And that was only after a lot of persistence, right? So if we think about schools that didn't have as much capacity and bandwidth, they were not as likely to get that free, awesome program as other schools were. It was exhausting, it was overwhelming, and I probably spent during that project, I would estimate an easy 50 to 60% of my day trying to make these connections via calls, via emails. Does this sound familiar to any of you out there who were doing this work 10 years ago and maybe even today a little bit? So where does that leave us? Ingenuity and CALI, that kind of collective convening that I spoke about a few minutes ago, was a bit of a turning point in this journey here. So we were founded in 2011 at Ingenuity to help the arts education kind of continue progressing towards a goal of arts education equity, no matter what those district changes are, no matter the fact that we had 7 CEOs and 6 directors of arts education. It was really important for us to be that outside group helping to keep the district on track as it came to their arts education priorities. And our founding was a direct response to that CALI plan and to the work that was developed there in 2010. So it really called for this better coordination. And there were 5 large-scale priorities. I won't bore you with all of them right now, but I do want to draw your attention to one. And it was the very first key priority of that CALI plan. And it was to create actionable knowledge through data sharing. So there were really kind of 3 key components that I'll flag for you here. One was to analyze the data that currently existed within CPS and to create a reporting mechanism to track progress. Again, CPS's systems, even the way HR is done, some of you may know that the way CPS even tags and codes its employees looks very different school to school, even though a teacher may be technically doing the same job. It's very complex. So there was one call to say, okay, somebody needs to figure out how to put this all together. Another call to action was to create an online tool to market the services of arts providers and to track their programs in schools. Any of this sounding familiar, folks? And then finally, to create an online map that actually demonstrated the ability and the availability of arts education within the district. So we were born, and that's what we did as an organization. The first version of ARTLOOK, if you were around back then, this may look familiar to you. This was the first version of ARTLOOK. And when we launched ARTLOOK, there were really only 2 kind of main pieces of information that became available to everybody. One was, is there a certified and/or endorsed arts educator in this building? And what are the disciplines that they're teaching? And then who are the community partners working within that school? So just really, again, 2 key pieces there. But finally, having the access to that information was completely revolutionary at the time. Truly, it changed how people were actually able to make connections with schools and understand what was happening on the ground and at the school level. So it sure would have helped me when I was trying to take my program to 100 different schools in the course of 6 months. Now, keep in mind that the CPS Arts Education Plan and the arts liaisons had not been created yet. So if you look on this kind of search by, I know it's a little bit small for you to read, but we didn't have arts liaisons. We didn't have a creative school certification yet. It was really very beta in what it was, yet still pretty revolutionary. So you flash forward 8 years to where we are today, and data remains at the heart of our work at Ingenuity. ARTLOOK isn't only just kind of this prettier interface to use. I mean, arguably it is way prettier, but the difference really go far beyond the aesthetics of what you see on the page. Its capabilities are completely different. Between that first version of ARTLOOK and what we've got now, there have been countless upgrades, countless additions that are always being added to the platform. And some of them you probably know about, but my guess is that a lot of them you don't know about. So today we're going to try to help you understand a little bit more of what those tools are and how to really maximize all of this 10 years of work that has gone on to help you make the connections that are really going to bring your program to our students and the schools that need it most, to really use ARTLOOK as a tool for driving equity of your programs within the systems, not just a tool to kind of find out what's happening where, but to really use that data in an informed way to make program decisions, to bring your programs to schools, to make sure that every single student in our district has access to your programs. So, Court, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Excellent. Thank you for that context, Nicole. So like Nicole said, this brings us to the present moment. As I mentioned earlier, in a couple of weeks, we're going to be holding a summit for teachers, and they're going to be looking at you, your profiles, and not just in a general sense. If you've attended a summit in the past, you know that we hold a drawing for teachers and give away $30,000 in funds to jumpstart meaningful partnerships. So this year is really no different. We're doing the same, but there's a tiny catch. In order to be entered into the drawing, the educator needs to use ARTLOOK during the event to find and reach out to at least 3 partner matches based on their specific wants and needs. So not just partner name familiarity or general interest. And partners who have completed a profile update will come up in their search. And then we'll also provide a curated list of partners from this evening. So you'll be right out in front of them. So this afternoon, our goal is really to help you maximize all of the ARTLOOK features available to make your programs stand out. So it's all about making your unique programs visible and easy to search on the map, like Nicole was saying. So in just a minute, Nicole will walk you through what a complete profile looks like and how teachers will search for you. And we'll take a look at some new features on school profiles as well. So some of the ones that you may not even know about. So for instance, did you know that schools are now expressing arts interests in a narrative form? So in addition to specific disciplines that they're interested in, they can get even more specific and talk about the more granular needs and interests that their school has right now. Did you know that you can find out what's happening now in a school? So this is completely new. In past years, you've only been able to access data from previous years, but now you can see what's happening in the current year in real time and find out, for instance, how many partnerships or programs schools are running right now to help kind of inform what your partnerships might look like. And did you know that you can access arts course data? Did you know you can distinguish between arts and non-arts teachers teaching in the arts? And did you know that you can add more detailed information on your organization and programs? So all of that is possible right now. I'm going to pass it back to Nicole to guide us through some demonstrations so you can see it in action.
How do you know if you're on ARTLOOK? Anybody name that? Name that where that's from? I don't know. It just comes into my head. Yay, Enchanted! Holler out there. Great. So we are going to kind of walk you through a few case studies. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment as I transition onto a staging site. So what we're doing on this back end here, you won't necessarily see on the front end. But I'm going to first ask Veronica Stein, the lovely Veronica Stein from Snow City Arts, to come on in. She's one of our willing and wonderful case studies today. Veronica, are you there?
I am. Good to see you, Nicole.
Hey, good to see you. How's it going?
It's fabulous, especially with your, musical expressions. Nothing has changed but the platform.
I just can't help myself. I really just can't help myself. Okay, so Veronica.
Yes.
Snow City Arts, tell us a little bit, just like high level, what does Snow City Arts do? And just kind of a snapshot so everyone out there understands your work.
Sure. So Snow City Arts provides arts education to children and youth in the Chicagoland area pediatric hospitals. However, we have pivoted and we now are offering our services virtually. And we are We are now available beyond the hospital room, which is really exciting for us. And we're really thinking about how to use, specific to ARTLOOK, this platform to highlight this shift. So we're working with students who may have gone home from the hospital, or who have worked with us over the years, for example, or students who just have an interest in the services that we provide in art education. So thinking about our work in different ways.
That's awesome. Because you know what? Shift happens, right? Okay, so let's do a bit of a test run. And for those of you who are with us at home, I am on right now a staging site. So the things that we mess around with here, we're not messing up anybody's profile. We'll get everybody kind of back on track afterwards. But this is really an opportunity to demonstrate if a teacher comes to ARTLOOK, as we're going to instruct them to do on November 12th, we want to kind of walk you through a scenario of what they will find based on what you're kind of looking for here. So let's pretend that I am a school, okay, Veronica?
Yeah.
And I want to know what's happening right now in the partner sector. So let's say I'm really interested in a visual art program. Can you all see what I'm doing here? Selecting. I should actually first, before we get into this, do just a quick little, I think most of you probably know this, but partners or schools is your search functionality. What's happening now is that new added feature that Courtney just spoke about, but we also have the historic view of data from previous years. This is our keyword search. So you could just go right in and say Snow City, but if you don't know who Snow City is, where do you begin? And then our advanced filters, which is what we really want to draw your attention to today. This is where the money happens. This is the magic area, both for the partner side and for the school side. So we're going to go through partners first. So let's say I am a school and I am really interested in a visual art program, and I am interested in virtual or online programs because of where we are. So if I just use those two filters and click on a search, right now, ARTLOOK Map is only going to bring up 5 matches. And notice that our dear friends at Snow City aren't listed on here. But Veronica, you just said you do virtual programs, right?
I sure did. We do virtual programs.
Well, let's check it out and see why it's not listed on the map.
I'm very interested.
Okay, can you all see this? This is the back end portal. Are you seeing this, or are you still seeing the ARTLOOK map? Yeah, okay. So Veronica, this is your back end of the portal, the dashboard, as we call it, the partner portal. And at the kind of landing page here, you have these different areas that you can go into a little bit more detail on. So let's first check into your organizational details. This is where that school would find out about disciplines. So this top part looks great. You've added a logo, which is awesome. Visual pop is always great on the map. So this part looks great. Your about also looks pretty filled out here. Your location is good. And your disciplines are filled out. Well, that's great. So it must be something else that's not coming up in that filter, because when we filter, it's kind of taking both of those elements and trying to find one match on both of those things together. Now, you might notice, Veronica, we've got a question here that you don't have a response to. This is one of the new questions that we've just added for this year. This is something that doesn't show up on the front face of your profile, but is a really important question for us as a sector. It doesn't show up yet, I should say. We're still kind of figuring out how and what the value is for our audiences in kind of demonstrating or displaying this question. But Ingenuity, I hope many of you have heard this already. We are committed to undoing white supremacy and racism and the work that not only we do as an organization, but really understanding as a sector how we need to do better. And our work, because of where we stand, we really don't have any information about our BIPOC colleagues in this work and our BIPOC organizations. So we worked with Enrich Chicago to develop some of these questions to really get a sense within organizations, how is the leadership of the organization? What about the board? And the mission. How is the work specifically speaking to BIPOC people and artists? And we just have added some questions here to find out a little bit more. So Veronica, would you choose any of these to display?
Absolutely. And first, this is fantastic. I would select that we actively work to present and promote BIPOC artists.
Great.
We really revamped our curriculum in that way. And I would select that we primarily serve students, more than half, the one directly under that. Correct. Those two apply to us.
Awesome. Great. So we'll add that on there. We'll save. And then we'll go on to this next part. So again, that's not going to come up in a search bar that a teacher might do for you yet. It may come up eventually, but right now, just on this page, the only thing that they'd be able to kind of filter for is that discipline, but you weren't coming up in that. So remember, we were looking at the what's happening now, which is 2021 school year. So we don't have your programs on the 2021 school year, that what's happening now yet. But if I go back, clearly you've added in program information from previous years. So Veronica, for sake of just kind of testing this out, can we copy one of your programs from a previous year? Just
Absolutely.
for this time?
Absolutely. The virtual learning is what is most relevant, I think, in this current moment.
Great. So let's add that here. And once it's added, you can then go in, and we suggest that you do this to make sure everything's right. Make sure you've got any changes here. So you've got the name, you've got the grade levels here, a beautiful description laid out. Oh, but goodness, we've got new approaches here. This is one of our new questions that asks the program to articulate a little bit more clearly what are the instructional approaches. And if you do need definitions, we've got that link here that pops up to kind of give you a sense of what we mean by these things. Or if it's something else that we haven't listed here, we'd love to know that too, because a lot of our teachers are looking for that. So Veronica, for your, you probably need to think about these more, but for the case of example for today, is there one of these or two of these that makes the most sense for this virtual program?
Sure. I'm debating in between arts and integration and STEAM. Most people don't know that all of our curriculum is integrated, so I've answered my own question. I'll do arts integration.
Okay, great. So we'll leave that there for now. And then let's see, program types. This is an online or virtual program. Great. Correct. So that already carried over from the previous year. And then this is also not a new question, but an expanded question. So a lot of the feedback that we got from schools and from partners was around that outcomes question. And so before we used to, I think, have the three that you've selected: academic, learning, artistic and technical, and social emotional, but we've added a whole other range of things based on some of what we value and some of what we heard the sector values. Does the curriculum have an anti-bias or anti-racist approach? Is it doing critical thinking or problem solving? How is it culturally responsive? There's also a kind of movement out right now for social justice and a set of standards that actually exist around that. Or is it trauma and healing informed? And again, you can click on that link and get more ideas about what exactly each one of those things are. So Veronica, for the sake of today, would you add anything else to this?
Absolutely. I would add anti-racist and anti-bias focus.
Great.
Culturally responsive approach.
Wonderful.
And trauma-informed healing-based approach. This is great. This is the exact language that we use to describe our programming. So
super easy too, right? This doesn't take a ton of time because you know your program so well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
A new question here as well. And this is something we hear from our arts teachers a lot, right? They are really curious about financial supports. And it's been really hard to help them sort through and say, are there programs that provide other resources that we could tap into? So are there discounted buses or materials or admissions? Is it a no-cost program? Do you provide teacher stipends or student scholarships?
Brilliant. No cost. Our virtual programming is no cost.
Awesome. And then we've got another question that's new, again, working with Enrich Chicago to develop a lot of these BIPOC related questions. We're also curious about our teaching artists, right? The program staff that are delivering those programs to students in school. Do you have, and kind of how often are the folks that deliver the programs to your school identifying as BIPOC?
Sure. So right now, I would say rarely. We have one teaching artist who would identify as BIPOC.
Great. And remember, these are not slaps on the wrist. These are opportunities for us to understand where and how we need to build our sector to really be equitable, not only in our program delivery, but also within our own organizations.
Absolutely.
And then this next section, Veronica, is probably pretty familiar to you already. This is the arts disciplines that are addressed by your program. This is where we get into a little bit more of the nitty-gritty of your program, where you kind of start to unpack. This tends to be something that the teachers are interested in, but maybe also don't know that much about, but really great differentiation of dance programs or visual arts programs here. Does this look pretty complete as it stands, Veronica?
It does. We have a new collage, though, a new collage one-way video on our site. So
hey,
yep.
Added that. Check.
Great. Thank you.
All
Everything
right.
else looks great.
So that's it. That's all you need to do to quickly update the program. We're going to save it. And while we're saving, I'm going to remind folks, or just kind of let people know, that ARTLOOK is pretty quickly automatically refining things and updating. Sometimes for the search, it'll come up automatically on your profile, but it won't necessarily come up in the search queue. So I'm going to first go to Snow City Arts just as a keyword search to show Veronica what happened when we updated her profile. So here's Snow City. We're looking at the what's happening now right up here. And again, we can look back to previous years here, but what's happening now. And we see that here are the disciplines offered, and here's that virtual learning that we just added. The primary outcomes is something that is being tweaked right now. That's a little bit of a back-end issue, but will show up here. And the description of that program itself. So it updated on this end. Now let's come back and run that search again. So let's see what happens when we do that same thing. Okay, so we're looking for partners. We're looking at what's happening now. And we first searched your discipline, and then we went to program types, and we said virtual or online. We search, and before Veronica didn't show up, oh, and now it says 6, and there is Snow City Arts now as a search response. Hooray!
This is great. And Nicole, this makes sense, so that when I pull a report of my program, all of the domains were empty. I'm like, I've entered this information. Why isn't this happening? And you've solved the mystery.
Hey,
thank you.
Yeah, awesome. And it's great. This is what we're going to be asking our teachers to use on November 12th. So even though we can't be together in the same place interacting like we used to, we really want to make sure that they have the latest information on your programs and the latest access on your programs. And that's how you do it.
Fantastic.
Veronica, thanks so much for joining us. We just appreciate you taking the time to go there and test this out with us.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure working with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Veronica. Okay, Drew, are you there?
I am here.
Hey, Drew. Welcome.
Hey, Nicole. Thank you.
So Drew is with the Lyric Opera. Drew, do you want to talk a little bit about the programs that you're working on at Lyric?
Absolutely. So as we all know, it's not a normal school year. So we've shifted from our programming that has been field trip based or working in the classroom to working virtually. So this year we're working on a few virtual residency programs where we have teaching artists working with elementary and high school teachers throughout CPS in Google Meets, good old Google Meets, as well as some online resources, videos, and lessons that teachers can access to bring opera to their students when they don't have access to the Opera House and we don't have access to them in their schools.
Well, that's great. I'm so excited to see all of the innovation that you all are doing out there in virtual programming. I know it's not easy, but you're going to be pros by it. Okay, so let's search first, Drew, for partners, what's happening now? Let's look at music and let's go and see about that online or virtual program that you're offering right now. So again, I'm a teacher, I want a virtual music program. And right now it only looks like there are 8 matches. So this means that 8 organizations listed here have updated their profile for the what's happening now, that they'll be actually visible in that search. So let's go back and look at your profile here, Drew, and see what's going on that back end.
I think some of the same things we might have saw with Veronica.
Some of the same things. So we'll maybe go through this a little bit more quickly, but just to kind of do another echo here. So we can add a logo to your profile. That's a new feature. You've got your about, you've got your disciplines, but your BIPOC questions you can fill out. And let's look at those programs. And yeah, that's the big thing. That's where a lot of those search functionality pieces come into play. It's drawing from your programs and your program descriptions. So that's the opportunity to go through and copy and paste from another school year, and then go through exactly what Veronica and I did to kind of check out and bring you up to date into that search functionality. Any questions on that, Drew? Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me. I'm just curious, like, what are some of the ways in which, so we're searching specifically by discipline, but what is like a way for maybe you to make your program show up in searches when they're not searching specifically for like music programs, or they're searching for some other sort of aspect? Is that where all of the descriptors come in that you went through with Veronica on the program, where that'll help populate your programming into those searches if they're not just looking for music or theater or dance?
These kind of more specific program areas here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. This is this helps to get more specific. At this point, I think the program descriptions may not be at this point populating on the map. They will be populating within the very near future. I often think that right now our teachers don't know enough about these differences. They may not be going there yet because they need a little bit more coaching and where to find things. But this is where they would go, is to the partner discipline. Keep in mind, sometimes teachers, again, they want a bit of a longer list. They don't want like 600 partners on a list, but the more you select, right, the more specific you get, the smaller your list is going to get. So as it relates to November 12th, when we meet with everybody, we're likely not going to touch the program disciplines because we don't want it to knock everybody out. We'll likely keep it to the higher level program partner disciplines to make sure that they see the widest variety of your programs.
And then a follow-up question, with everything being mostly online and virtual and trying to connect people to maybe your website, is there a way for you to direct teachers to where programming or resources live through the program description? Like, is there a URL option as part of the new features? So like if you're looking at online streaming opportunities, you can click the link that's in the program description and it'll take you right to that web page, or is it just the organization's website that you can direct people to?
So I think what you would be able to do is list that in your program description itself. That's right now where I would suggest that you put an additional link. Keep in mind, however, though, if you select virtual or online learning, you're automatically going to go to the virtual learning library. Whoops. That's not it. So our virtual learning library launched just a few months after the pandemic hit, and we knew we were going to be in a virtual place for a while. If you haven't seen this yet, welcome to the virtual learning library. Again, it takes your virtual programs. You need to have that ARTLOOK profile updated and running, but it's going to take any of those online virtual programs and put things into a more working directory. This, again, in the program description here, Drew, you can see that many people have added links directly into that.
Perfect. That's great.
Cool. I'm glad you mentioned that. Okay, so I'm gonna pause here. Drew, thanks so much for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And I want to do one more search, just one more thing to demonstrate for you. I know what we've done now is bring you through a couple of scenarios of what it's going to be like for a school to find you when they're meeting next week. But we also wanted to take a minute to help you understand how to find a school, vice versa. So if we go back to our main search page, as Courtney mentioned, we've got that what's happening now. Schools have actually just finished completing their Creative Schools report, their certifications. That's a different timeline than it was in the past. In years past, they completed their surveys much farther along in the spring. And so we've got a better and more accurate snapshot of what is happening now without that kind of year delay that we always used to have before. So that's awesome, right? It gives you a lot more up-to-date information. So we're going to go through and do a scenario here on how you might search and what some of the capabilities are that are new on the back end here. So let's say I'm looking for a school that's either emerging or developing in the arts. There are schools that have less arts resources already in them. And I'm really looking at the kind of program that, let's see here, program resource, oops, there we go. Discipline interest, I'm interested in, let's say theater as a discipline. Oops. There we go. And I'm just going to select all of these right now. Again, there are schools that are selecting these specific things, but if they're at all interested in theater or you're doing many different things in theater, I would recommend you click select all. Resources or programs. Let's say this school is looking for online and virtual programs. And let's say that you're also really interested in bringing your program to schools that are 51 to 75% of the school population or more is low income families. Okay, so those are some pretty specific parameters to look for. Let's see what pops up on ARTLOOK. We've got one match here, Harriet Sayre Elementary. So let's come into this and look at what's happening right now at Sayre. Now remember, we can go through and look at their previous year's data, but this is the snapshot of right now. So this top part should look pretty familiar to you. A note about the Creative School Certification section is this information, and that information on Creative Schools is actually a carryover from their score last year. Scores have not yet been released for this year, and we're not going to be releasing them this year because we know last year was such a challenging time for schools. We don't think it's necessarily right to give them that score, but we will release them to them internally so they could use them for planning purposes. So what you see here is really better reflected in what was happening in the school the prior year. You find out a little bit of what that looked like within the school, but here's where it gets interesting. The school has articulated what their interests are. They've selected arts disciplines, types of programs, and types of resources that they want. So we said we were looking for a theater program. So if I'm a theater organization, what are the specific interests of this school? Readers Theater, Story Club, and Drama Club. And they're also interested in online virtual, PD, mentoring, curriculum assistance, all of these things. Now, this is a new feature that's super cool. We've also asked schools to provide, and they don't have to do this, but many have, just a very brief description of what's happening right now and what their needs are at the moment in the school. So Sayre here has expressed interest in integrating arts education, in having students as part of expanding that process. This is some great information to have on that school and a way to kind of use that to get in touch with that arts liaison in a specific way, right? Our arts liaisons are getting inundated with mass emails, and those are not super effective, right? What's really effective is to look at a profile like this and say, hey, I see you have interest in X, Y, and Z, and that you stated this is what you need. Here's how I think we can work together. You'll likely be much more effective in partnering with them in that way. And then if we look at theater, we can see what they are doing now in school or out of school in the discipline itself. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that. That was just an opportunity, I think, to provide everyone here with a bit of a look on what is happening in ARTLOOK, some of the exciting new things that you can do with the platform itself.
Nicole?
Yeah, hey, Steve.
Hi. Can I?
Our Director of Data and Research, everyone, Steve Schufelt.
I just wanted to, there was one question that arose that I wanted to add one additional idea for about how the search can work. Nicole, in the presentation she just did, was focused a lot on the ways that you can filter, right? So you can basically sort of say, I only want to see people who have checked that they are a theater organization. I only want to see organizations that have said that they offer a field trip or an online program. That's a great way to filter down. It's also true, and this is one of the things that we will be talking to schools about in that summit, that the search bar, the keyword search bar, is a great place for schools to look for you. That search bar will automatically look through all of the language that you've included in your organization description and in every program description, as well as the school name, name of your organization, and even the names of the people in your organization. So I just wanted to highlight that that's one of the other areas where teachers will be able to find you if you're providing those kinds of descriptions in your profile.
Thanks, Steve. That's super, super helpful. Okay, we are going to move on. Part of our goal today was not just to talk to you about what is happening within ARTLOOK, but to really provide you with an opportunity to do some of that work. As we saw, it's not super difficult, right? And you probably have most of this work already done. It's a couple more checkboxes. But when we meet with those teachers next week on November 12th, we are going to be bringing them through the paces. And in order to be entered into that drawing for up to, a total of $30,000 in partner starter funds, we are really going to be asking them to find you and reach out to you that night. We want to have some urgency to it, and we have a way to track that. So we're really excited about that. But if that is going to work, we have to get you to update that what's happening now today, or certainly before the 12th. So Courtney, I'm just going to bring you up here to see if I'm missing anything before we set folks off to do some of this work. Should we remind folks about the breakout sessions?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have any questions about ARTLOOK, including profile information, login information, search capabilities, or you want to troubleshoot something, you'll be able to chat with Steve and Ingenuity's data analyst, Rebecca Perdomo. And you will also have an opportunity, if you have any questions about partnering with CPS right now, including questions about acceptable use policy, tier status, you'll have an opportunity to talk with Rachel and Jess from earlier. And Nicole and I will also be available here if you'd like to send us direct messages in the chat. And I'm going to go ahead and drop some of those links for you that Nicole just showed in the chat.
And as Courtney is doing that, we are also getting you in the game a little bit too, and making sure that you have something to take away as well. So if you update that what's happening now portion of your profile, we tomorrow are going to do a drawing based on who is here and who stayed through to update the profile of a variety of gift cards. And this is a great, exciting thing. You can have the opportunity to win one of these gift cards. They are from almost entirely, I think, except for Etsy, mostly local BIPOC creative businesses that are around town. And so here's how you enter the drawing. Courtney has just entered in the links for those breakout sessions. Again, those are optional. You can hop in there. If you have a question, you certainly don't have to go there. But Courtney is also going to drop in a form that we are asking you to complete when you have done that updating. It is completion of that form that Courtney just dropped that we will use to do for the drawing itself. So the winners will be announced tomorrow via our social media pages. So stick around, stay out, check it out, and we will let you know who is the winner of one of these awesome gift cards from one of these fabulous places. Okay, so with that, we're going to play some music. We invite you to start updating your profile. If you have any technical issues or are having trouble finding that login that you need, Steve's team in that breakout can certainly help you do that. If you, again, got questions about how to get through the acceptable use policy, we also have Jess and Rachel on hand to help you as well.
Hello all, welcome back. Hopefully you were all able to make some new dynamic updates to your profiles and got some of your questions answered. I think some people had maybe some longer questions and stayed in the other rooms, and that's completely okay. Just a quick note that any of the updates that you made to your profile will take about an hour to be re-indexed and then reflected in the search again. So if you don't see the updates that you made right away, don't worry about it. And also don't forget to submit the Google form and let us know that you've updated your profile through that form. We'll be announcing drawing winners tomorrow on our social media page. And yeah, it looks like we have about 20 responses right now, or 20 entries, but I'll check on those tomorrow kind of mid-morning and make sure that
can we say that we'll stop accepting those by 10 a.m. tomorrow?
Yeah, that's a good
10 a.m. tomorrow, everyone. We will close the form at 10 a.m. tomorrow.
Yes, and then be on the lookout for communications from teachers on November 12th as well. So before you take off, I just have a few updates and announcements to make. But thank you so much for being here with us today. We hope this was helpful for you. So first off, Ingenuity and the ArtsEd Shy, a cross-organizational working group comprised of arts educators and administrators primarily from the theater discipline, are currently collaborating to create a series of anti-racism trainings and resources that are intended to respond to specific teaching and learning needs of teaching artists. So we have come together to create a questionnaire that is just intended to determine the really granular and specific anti-racism training needs of the teaching artist community in Chicago. And the completion of this questionnaire is going to help us develop differentiated learning goals and outcomes for a forthcoming training. So I'm going to now drop the link to that questionnaire into the chat. And if you can share that with any teaching artists, that would be wonderful. Okay, and then also, if you haven't heard already, this November, Ingenuity will kick off a trauma-informed and healing center training program for arts partners. We're really excited about this. It's going to bring together a team of trauma-informed organizations and practitioners. The program will aim to provide partners with sector-wide assistance and capacity building and understanding, implementing, and advancing trauma-informed care and healing-centered principles and competencies into practice. So the program will be divided into two parts. I'm going to give you the quick rundown. Part one of the program will aim to build a trauma-informed care and healing-centered knowledge base through a series of over 11 trainings facilitated by a consortium of organizations, including Chicago Growth Mindset, Illinois Collaboration on Youth, and the Illinois ACEs Response Collaborative. And that's really to better support the very learning needs of the sector. The trainings will be divided into two tracks, one for organizations and one specifically for educators and individuals. And these initial trainings will run from mid-November through the end of February. And then part two of the program will start up in the spring in March and will include a series of collective impact sessions across artistic discipline, facilitated by members of the Institute for Therapy Through the Arts. So this series will aim to get more specific about trauma-informed and healing-centered principles in practice, specifically through the lens of the arts. So all of these programs are going to culminate in a final toolkit and guidebook that will include a comprehensive assessment, resources, and video trainings. So the official program information will be released at the beginning of November in Ingenuity's Q2 catalog. So stay tuned and be on the lookout for that. And then finally, Ingenuity is currently working closely with the CPS Department of Arts Education to explore bringing the Creative School certification into the district school accountability system, which is called the School Quality Rating Policy, or the SQRP. So this would be a big win for arts education because it would be another way that the district is formalizing its commitment to arts education, and would mean that schools have incentives within the district's accountability system to provide all students with access to the arts. So as part of this effort, we're asking for your help. So if you can please take the survey, I'm about to drop the link into the chat. It'll help us understand how you think about what makes a school truly excelling in the arts, and to share your input on the importance of adding an arts indicator to the SQRP. So let me add that for you, just one moment. Okay. There we go. Okay, and so that is the SQRP survey link, if you can go ahead and take that. And then just a big thank you for all of you for being here with us today. Like I said, I hope this was really helpful. We'll be checking the profile completion tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. We'll post it on our social media and announce the winners. We'll have 8 winners in total.
And I just want to pop in as well and say, I know some of you are still having some technical questions. We are happy to work through those, and maybe Steve on our data team and Rebecca can stay on if you're having a technical issue getting on the back end. We'd be happy to walk that through with you to make sure that you have what you need. But thank you, everybody. We hope and again, there's no replacing being face-to-face and with everybody together in the same room for a summit. But we're so glad that you're here and that you're filling out the profile. We're really trying our hardest to connect teachers to your programs. So, you know, again, we'll be here for the next half an hour or so. If you have questions about completion, I just once more dropped the link to the completion form in the chat. So please do that for your own kind of updating purposes here. All right, so we'll say goodbye to everyone here, and thank you to everyone for joining us. And stick around if you've got additional questions. I see some of you do, and we will be here to help. Thanks so much, everyone. Please stay safe right now and stay healthy and be well. Bye-bye.